What is up, guys? Flashfire here, and today I'm bringing you another competitive OU team builder. Before we get started, if you can, drop a like right down below this video. I want to see if we can get this to 70 likes. If we can, I'll put a pastebin file of this team down in the description of this video, so you guys can copy and paste it into Showdown and play with it straight away, because this team has been a lot of fun. If you've been coming out to the streams, you may have seen me testing it a little bit. It's been performing pretty well. So it is based around Mega Alakazam, because I figured it's been a long time since I used this guy, and he's a really nice mon. So I thought I'd crack him out. Now this is a fantastic late game sweeper, Alakazam. It's crazy good. Its main things that it struggles with are like steel types, obviously steel types, dark types, and that kind of stuff, and bulky psychic types, and just generally special walls are problems for it. But hopefully we've constructed the team well enough that we can deal with all those things. And yeah, we'll go from there. So basically, this Alakazam, we're going to be running Psychic over Psyshock on this guy, just because we're going to be using this guy to hit as hard as possible, and we want to hit physically defensive mons with it. We have other mons to deal with special walls like Blissey and Chansey and all that kind of stuff, so we don't need the Psyshock there. This lets us hit stuff like Rotom, Lando T, Mega Venusaur a bit harder, and I think it lets us pick up a KO on most Mega Venusaur, possibly. That could be wrong. And then we have Focus Blast on there, because obviously we struggle with Steel types and Dark types, so this gives us 70% of the time, it works every time, coverage against those guys, and obviously Rock types as well, but they're not that common in this tier. So yeah, I mean, most of the time you want to avoid having to use Focus Blast if you can, because obviously if you miss, Alakazam probably dies. It's a pretty frail mon, but most of the time, Focus Blast is real good. And then Shadow Ball is there to hit the Psychic types that the Psychic Focus Blast coverage can't deal with, such as the Latties. Obviously, it does give you some damage against stuff like Celebi and Mew, but most of the time, you want to use a different mon to deal with those, because Shadow Ball normally does about 30 to 40% to those two. And it's just not worth it. And then in the final move slot, we do have Substitute right there. Just because this guy behind a sub is so threatening, it's actually ridiculous. We could obviously put something like HP Fire on there to guarantee KOs on Scizor and Ferrothorn and all that kind of stuff, but I think Substitute is a real good tool for this guy, especially if we want to use him as a late game sweeper. It lets us compete with Bishop as well, because obviously there's some mind games about Sucker Punch, Pursuit, knock off, all this kind of shenanigans when you've got this versus Bishop. If you can pull a sub on their Sucker Punch and then follow up with a Focus Blast the next turn, you've only taken 25%, your Alakazam's still alive, their Bishop's dead. It's a great time. So those are some of the uses of those things. And then obviously regular Alakazam has Magic Guard, which is fantastic for avoiding hazards damage, and status damage. And then finally, the final thing that we got to talk about with this guy is when it Mega Evolves, it gets Trace, which is a crazy good ability just because, well, most of the time it's average, but sometimes it's crazy good. You can trace stuff like Flashfire from Heatran, you can trace Magnezone's Magnet Pull, trap the Magnezone and kill it. You can trace weather speed moves, that didn't make any sense, like Sand Rush. You can switch it into Excadrill in the sand. It traces Sand Rush, becomes faster than Excadrill and kills it. It's just, Trace can have so many good uses, it's actually crazy. So, it's a really fun mon to use, this guy. And yeah, so obviously this is one of the fastest things going, but it's also very frail. So we got to kind of try and get the opponent's team to a point where this guy can clean through it without being hit by anything, ideally. You want to get to a point where this guy doesn't have to take any damage from any opposing mons, because most of the time he dies. So the next mon we're going to go over, this is going to be, like I said, we have stuff to deal with special walls, and Heatran is going to be our way to deal with special walls. We're going to be running Stall Breaking Heatran with Magma Storm, just because this allows us to trap walls and kill them. It works really well against Mega Sableye, the Blobs, Blissey and Chansey, and all of this kind of stuff. It also kills Mega Venusaur, not that we really need an extra Mega Venusaur killer on top of Alakazam, but yeah, that's a thing. It functions as a bird spam check, because obviously Alakazam is weak to priority. This can check Talonflame, which is great. Magma Storm, Toxic. Obviously, because this is the Stall Breaking set, you want to be able to Magma Storm the special wall and kill it and taunt it. So we've got Magma Storm, Toxic Taunt, and Stealth Rock. Because having Stealth Rocks on this team is really useful. It allows Alakazam to pick up some extra KOs. For example, I think Latias, after Stealth Rock damage, dies to Shadow Ball. Just stuff like that. Just like that little bit of extra chip damage can really help Alakazam out in the late game. So this is what that's for. Now the spread we're going to be running on this guy is, I do believe, 68 in speed, and then the rest of the special defense with a calm nature. This allows us to outspeed up to Mega Venusaur and like Taunt, Magma Storm, all this kind of stuff. It's really important if you've got this versus Mega Venusaur to get a Taunt off early, because most Mega Venusaur don't run Earthquake. And getting a Taunt off means that the Venusaur basically can't do anything. It can't Leech Seed, it can't Synthesis, and it's just stuck. So the ideal scenario is you have Magma Storm then Taunt and just have a good time. But yeah, so this is here to set up rocks and break special walls. It's our main method of getting rid of Mega Sableye as well, which is a big threat. And will effectively wall Alakazam, which is very, very sad. Now the next mon we're going to go over, I decided to pair Heatran defensively with Rotom Wash. Obviously this gives us bare bird spam checks, which is fantastic. It does make us quite weak to Mold Breaker Excadrill, because our two main defensive mons get wrecked by Mold Breaker Excadrill. But we do have enough stuff on the rest of the team to deal with it that it shouldn't be too much of an issue. So the moves we're going to go for on this guy are Hydro Pump, Volt Switch, Will-O-Wisp, and Pain Split. This guy is going to be acting as I said, a second bird spam check, not that we probably need one, and also an Azumarill check, which is very important because this team currently doesn't have one. Oh, I should point out we should do 0 attack IVs on all of our special attackers so that we take less foul play damage. That's always a good time to do. Done it on Alakazam already. This is cool. Not a fan. And yeah, so this is a second bird spam check. It also functions as an Azu check and a Lando check, and it gives us a relatively slow Volt Switch in order to get safe switches into Alakazam, which is fantastic because, as we've mentioned, Alakazam is very, very frail, and you don't want to switch it into opposing attacks. You want to be able to get a free switch into it as much as possible. So getting a slow Volt Switch off can be fantastic. Obviously, Will-O-Wisp is there for control of physical attackers. And yeah, it's just a really nice mon to have. The next mon that we're going to go over, looking at this team right now, it seems pretty good. I notice we don't really have an effective switch into Heatran. We don't really have an effective switch into Rotom, which is a big problem because those are the two of the most common mons in OU. As you can see, we've got them on the team at the moment. So I decided that here we would go for Conkeldurr. Not only does this give us a great switch into those two mons, but it gives us a fantastic offensive check to stuff like Bishop and Tyranitar, Kyurem, Excadrill, all this kind of stuff. Just hates Conkeldurr's Mach Punch. Now, I know a lot of people like the idea of like Sheer Force Life Orb and Iron Fist and all this kind of stuff. I personally, and I think I'm in the majority here, I'm of the school of thought that Guts is better, just because it makes it, especially as I want this to be a Heatran and Rotom switch-in, it means that if I do get burned by Lava Plume or Will-O-Wisp, it doesn't matter, it actually helps me. And the extra damage output you get from Guts is so useful. It allows you to 2-hit KO Hippowdon, I think, and a bunch of other stuff. It's just a really good thing to have. So the moves we're going to go for are Mach Punch, Drain Punch, Ice Punch, and Poison Jab. Now, I would normally run either one of Ice Punch and Poison, or Poison Jab and then Knock Off, but I've been running this spread with this team, this moveset, sorry, and it's actually been working out much better than I thought it would. So we're going to stick with it, just because it's alright. Like, the only thing you miss out on hitting now is Psychic types, and the main Psychic type that switches into this is the Latis anyway, and Ice Punch hits those just as hard, so, or, well, it still kills those, so I don't know, that's just how I'm feeling. But anyway, this is the standard Conkeldurr EV spread as well. The reasoning behind all of this stuff is it gives you the most kind of bulk to tank special hits, and the speed there is to guarantee that you outspeed opposing Conkeldurr, or not guarantee, but make it more likely that you outspeed opposing Conkeldurr, and more or less guarantee that you outspeed opposing Hippos that you would otherwise speed tie with. Adamant Nature, obviously, because this guy's slow as balls, you don't want to Jolly Nature on him, and you want to hit as hard as possible, get as much health back with Drain Punch as possible, do as much damage with Mach Punch as possible. Now, the next one we want to go over, as we've mentioned, Alakazam does struggle with Psychic types. Obviously, Heatran does function as a switch into a lot of Psychic types, but Focus Blast is run on a lot of Psychic types, so, you know, it's kind of a trade-off. The thing that we want next is something that can reliably and effectively take out Psychic type mons that Alakazam struggles with. And obviously, like, the classic thing to do that with is Bishop. We're going to be using Black Glass's Pursuit Trapping Bishop for this slot. because it really does help the team out quite a lot. It gives us reliable super effective damage on fairies, on psychic types, and it gives us knockoff, which is fantastic. It also gives us a second form of priority, which can be very, very helpful, as OU tends to be relatively offensive. Having priority is going to be great. Gives us a way to kill opposing Alakazam and all this kind of stuff. It's just a good time, really. So we have Sucker Punch, Knockoff, Pursuit, and Ironhead. Obviously, we're not going to be running Swords Dance on this guy. We're also missing out on Low Kick and all this kind of stuff, which you could argue is bad, but I think most of the time it doesn't make that much difference. In testing, I've been running an Adamant nature on this guy, and it's been working out really well. I haven't missed the speed at all. Mainly because you only speed tie with other base 70s, and the only base 70 I can think of right now is Breloom, which Mac punches you anyway and you just cry. Like, it doesn't actually make that much difference over running Jolly and Adamant speed-wise, and running Adamant means that you hit that little bit harder. It's not even a little bit, it's actually quite a lot. You pick up quite a few extra KOs after rocks and all this kind of stuff by running Adamant, so I really feel like that is the best way to run this guy. And then finally, in the last slot, you will have noticed we don't have a spinner yet, and I felt like Starmie would fit this slot really well. Mainly because if you look at the team at the moment, it is quite weak to Keldeo. Keldeo will clean through this team quite effectively, except for the Rotom kind of. But it's very nice to have kind of a secondary check to that guy. Also, Starmie is just... I really like Starmie. I just really do. I used to dislike it because the conventional way to run it quite a while ago now, was to run a more bulky spread, and I really didn't like that. I really like offensive spinner Starmie, just as a mon generally, because you got Rapid Spin on there. It's a fast poke. It gives really reliable Rapid Spin, and then you have Ice Beam, Hydro Pump, and Psyshock here, because Psyshock allows us to kill Keldeo. Ice Beam, it's our only ice coverage on the team actually, so it is very, very helpful to have, well, except for Ice Punch on this guy. But this gives us a more reliable way to kill stuff like Garchomp and Lando, and Dragonite and all that kind of stuff. And then Hydro Pump just hits really hard. I think it deals about 50% to most variants of Sizzle, which is fantastic. And yeah, it's just a really nice supportive mon that can check Keldeo really well. So that's why Starmie's on the team. Now, that is going to be the whole team, guys. If you like it, as I said, drop a like down below. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already so that you can see the lives with this team that are going to be uploaded in a couple of days. And remember to suggest ways that I can improve this team down in the comments, because I always like to see you guys' suggestions on and how you guys feel about the team down below. So if you can leave those, that'd be great, and I will see you in the next one.